Hi, this is Shiva from Mythcrafts, and as always, feel free to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all of those things. It does help. But today I'm going to do something very near and dear to my heart. And excuse me if I go a little bit off script here and there, just to fill in a few blanks. But I'm starting in the narrative voice of the first man, at least in the Abrahamic faiths. Adamu, the man of soil, earth. And I'm wondering what it would be like to wake up after being banished from Eden. And this post is called Adam Wakes Outside the Garden. I awoke outside the walls of Eden. What have I done to get here? Why was Father so angry? What have I done to deserve this? Where is my missing half? And is she my equal or my helper? The Old Testament book of Genesis gives us two differing creation accounts and ascribes two different levels of status to women right at the start. This fact should be a theological issue for anyone reading Genesis in either the Hebrew or Christian Bibles. But there's a way out of these contradictions. But it does require the idea of two separate creation events. Now let's take a look. In the first account, Elohim, God, makes the world in 6 days, resting on the seventh. In succession, God said there shall be vegetation and then living creatures, and it was so. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. Okay, I'm going to put my first divergence from the actual written text here that we're publishing. But you will notice the plural of they in Elohim. I'm not going into that here today, but put that somewhere in your mind. So Elohim created mankind in his own image. In the image of Elohim, he created them, male and female. He created them. Elohim blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Sometimes translated as multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. I'm using primarily the King James Version here. KJV. This is significant to our reading of the story. In this account, humans, male and female, are created at the same time, in the image of Elohim. Male and female, they are created. Okay? And everything else has already been created. This is the last act of creation. Now jump ahead a few verses and we get a different narrative. And here we hear that then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Once again, I don't mention this in the scripted version of this, but this is pneuma. This is the idea of the soul being breath. And it's why we say things like a person expired, spiritus, and respiration, to respire. Spirit is breath, is the pneuma. Also, if you get pneumonia, that's pneuma. Okay? So pneuma and spirit, which are very Greek ideas, play very heavily into this narrative. Let's go back. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord commanded the man, "You are free to eat from any tree in this garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, you will certainly die." The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." Now the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. He brought them to the man to see what he would name them. And whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds in the sky, and all the wild animals. And once again, I don't go into this in the actual textual version of this, but this is a very important idea across most early religions. The idea that if you know the name of a thing, you have power over it. Which is why Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh, that's not God's name. That's not. That's a way of describing God. You're not allowed to know God's name. Because that would be to have power over God. This is a very important idea in a lot of Near Eastern traditions and even Far Eastern traditions, that, there's a secret name, a sacred name, and you're not supposed to know it. And that even goes to the custom of, for instance, popes taking on a different title because they're no longer themselves. The same thing happens in a lot of Vedic traditions, where if you're initiated by a guru, you get a different name. Why? Now you have a new name, and that old name, which did have power, no longer does. But I severely digress. And the Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." Now the Lord God had formed out of ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. He brought them to the man to see what he would name them. And whatever man called each living creature, that was the same. So the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds in the sky, and all the wild animals. But for the man no suitable helper was found. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and closed up the place with flesh. And then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. And the man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man." And this is why a man leaves his father and mother, is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. The man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. Okay, so there's a lot to digest here. In the first story, they are equals. And in the second story, she is defined not only as a helpmate, but as something made from him, in the same way that God had raised all of life from soil. So were the first man and woman created in the image of the Elohim after all living things? Or was Adam created alone before all other living things, so that when other life forms were created and they were pleasant to look at and good for food, Adam had Eve gifted as a subservient helpmate. Now this is a question that puzzled rabbis, and they came up with a working explanation, one based on Sumerian mythology. I once had a friend who declared there are no plot holes, just stories left to be told. I quite like that. That's a lovely, insightful idea. But you know what? It's not a plot hole, you just don't know the story. And this is not a new idea. So in Judaism, in what's called the Talmud, there's something called Midrash. And what Midrash is the narrative art of filling in plot holes in the Bible. And rabbis have had centuries to do this. So here's the workaround. What do you do when within the first 2 pages of a book you have differing accounts that on the surface, if you're just reading and just glossing, you might not see. But if you're paying any attention to the story, you're going to be like, well, what just happened? So here's the workaround again. In the first creation, Adam was made with an equal. Her name was Lilith. However, she refused to be sexually subservient to him, since they were equals. Lilith was banished from the Garden of Eden and morphed into something truly monstrous, a demon who tempted men and killed babies. And this was the Sumerian, Babylonian Lilith. She was a terror for mothers. So perhaps that's the story told so far. After Lilith's banishment, maybe it can be paraphrased along the following lines from Adam. I'm alone. Where's my missing half? We were created at the same time. Where is she now? So, fun fact, fun asides. The movie The Exorcist gets this so absolutely wrong in making Pazuzu an evil entity. In Sumerian mythology and in the practiced faith, in the actual practice of the faith, Pazuzu was an entity invoked to repulse Lilith and her army of demons. Pazuzu is a good guy. He's like a gargoyle. He's not pretty, but like gargoyles in later Christian iconography, you're not supposed to be pretty. You're supposed to scare away the monsters. And he was there to frighten off killing baby spirits. So, sorry for Reagan. That's the character from The Exorcist. Sorry about the spinning head and the vomiting puke on the priest, but I'm not going to blame Pazuzu for that. Pazuzu was there to help you. You should have asked Pazuzu for more help. Just saying. With Adam not being alone, which was not good, according to the Bible here, which was not good, the Elohim was prompted to reset creation. And in this second creation, he made Hawa, which literally means the source of life. And we call her Eve, because we're bad at names. Apparently, Adamu and Hawa don't have the same ring as Adam and Eve. And that's okay. But that's how the story progresses. I'm going to go back to Adam's voice here. This is me just waxing poorly, poetically. I see her. I am no longer alone. I have found peace. 2 creation narratives with 2 implications for the intrinsic roles of the sexes. No wonder the Abrahamic faiths have created so many gender issues. But for me, the real question is this. Who did Adam really love? The woman who is his equal, forged in the image of the divine, or the slave pulled from his side. Honest to God, only Elohim knows. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, once again, feel free to like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, and no matter what, have a blessed and beautiful day. Thank you very much from Mythcrafts.